In the world of leadership development, there's few who rival the great Daniel Goleman when it comes to understanding human emotion and human motivation. A renowned author and journalist, it's his background in psychology that has made him one of the most preeminent voices on the topic of leadership and how we should lead in this modern world that we all find ourselves living in and functioning in today. Whilst his leadership knowledge and experience is vast and deep, the thing he's possibly become most famous for, and maybe that he is most passionate about overall in his 50-year career to date, is the topic of emotional intelligence. It was the title and primary subject of his 1995 best-selling book, and a subject that he's written about in more than 10 books since then. In fact, you could easily say that his first book could be described as a catalyst for all future works, having been listed by Times magazine as one of the 25 most pivotal books in business management of all time. That's quite some accolade. Born in the mid-1940s to academic parents, Goleman grew up in the sunny suburbs of Stockton, California. From here, he entered a steady stream of academic success with studies completed at Harvard and Amherst on the US East Coast, but then UC Berkeley back home in his home state of California. It was Goleman's ties with Harvard, however, that would see his travels extend beyond the limits of his home country, where in the 1970s he did what so many other US-based leaders did and headed to the depths of South Asia. Completing more studies in India, he became particularly drawn to the teaching and wisdom of the spiritual guru Neem Karoli Baba, a highly sought-out spiritualist of that time. It was Goleman's experience of travelling through India and Sri Lanka that led to the publishing of his first book, The Varieties of Meditative Experience, a book which later got republished under the title The Meditative Mind. From his entrance into the world of publishing, Goleman headed into the world of journalism in the 1980s, first taking up posts at Psychology Today, and then going on to a really successful time with the New York Times. By the mid-1990s, Goleman's experience and expertise was vastly sought out on the subject of emotional intelligence, as it was in this time frame that he not only founded CASTLE, the Collaborative for Academic, Social and Emotional Learning, but also co-founded CREO, the Consortium for Research on Emotional Intelligence in Organisations. Enough about his background though. It's his work on leadership that dominates this episode, and in particular the research that was uncovered in his 2001 book, Primal Leadership, a book that he co-authored with fellow academics Richard Boatsits and Annie McKee. You see, it's in this book that Goleman introduces the concept of situational leadership, as in the subject of adapting your style of leadership according to the situation being faced. Now, just to be clear, this is not the situational leadership that you will find the most when you Google this subject. Many others have written about this, many have produced their own theories on the topic, the most famous of which is Ken Blanchard, who introduced the same but different concept in his 1982 book, The 1 Minute Manager. No, Goleman's situational leadership came about through a research project that he undertook at Harvard, whereby he and his co-researchers looked at the experience and results of some 3,000 mid-level managers in response to the simple question, what leadership gets results? Through a 3-year period, the intention was to determine whether specific leadership behaviours determine an effect on the corporate climate experienced by the employees, but also whether that same leadership style has any effect on the bottom line profitability that a company is able to achieve. It turned out that Goleman and his team were onto something. The results determined a resounding yes. Not only did they discover that a leader's style can determine as much as 30% swing in possible results a team or a company can achieve, but perhaps more importantly, they discovered that there were 6 distinct leadership styles that, when used correctly and in the correct setting, could drive such a difference in results. So what were these styles? And in what settings does Goleman determine that they get applied or not applied, as in the case in some instances? Well, they were these: the pace-setting leader, the authoritative leader, the affiliative leader, the coaching leader, the coercive leader, and finally, the democratic leader. Like I said, these styles, when applied in the right setting, and done well, of course, can lead to a potential 30% swing in the results potential. But that being said, Goleman drew out in his research that there is indeed a right and a wrong situation for all leadership styles he'd uncovered, and that in learning the art of flexible leadership, or effective leadership as he liked to refer to it, you have to master both the ability to flex to a different style of leadership, but also have the emotional intelligence to know when to do so and when not to do so. The notion of a pace-setting leader is one where the leader themselves role models excellence and self-direction. In doing so, they set the bar for how they expect everyone else on the team to perform. Taking this approach, it works great when a leader has a team of already highly motivated people or already highly skilled people, and when the quick results are needed. But should the team not be sufficiently motivated or maybe underskilled for what's needed, or should there be a need for creative thinking and innovation, then this leader's speed and the haste that they apply only acts as a disabling factor in people being able to find or make the time required in order to be inventive. In contrast, the authoritative leader sees a leader adopt an entrepreneurial style to their leadership approach. Now, this isn't to be confused with the word authority, which infers somebody taking charge or being in command, and is often a mistake commonly faced by people exploring this leadership style for the first time. Rather, this is about mobilizing people towards a common vision or a common goal, and it's about empowering those same people to deliver on their individual and collective parts. In many ways, this style of leadership sees the leader spell out a really clear and compelling what and why. What are we working towards and why is it important? And they leave the troops to determine themselves for how will we deliver on those things. The leader will deliver on their part, and it's the entrepreneurial flair that they've created and the spirit amongst the team that will see the others do the same thing. This style works wonders when you have a team that are appropriately skilled or appropriately equipped and they don't require guidance. But where there's a need for continuity or maybe consistency in people's work, that style of leadership can in fact be really detrimental to somebody's performance. And at worst, it can create chaos as the leader charges off, leaving people in their wake. The affiliative leader, on the other hand, now that's a particular favourite of mine. It's one I like to think I'm particularly good at, but it's also one that I know not to use continuously. This style of leadership is all about creating harmony amongst people. It's about building bonds or rebuilding bridges, and as such, it's great in the aftermath of trouble and strife. If you've ever had to handle company-wide layoffs or been in charge during a particularly traumatic time for a team, this style of leadership will work wonders. It's fabulous for rebuilding trust amongst people or encouraging people to go again and again and again and again if need be. That said though, it simply cannot be used continuously, as the relaxed and informal nature of this style of leadership can over time result in a severe impact on performance on a team. Given too much rope and too much recovery time, complacency sets in, and that can end up disastrous for companies and teams in the long run. We give up, we stop trying, we kind of care a little bit less. Halfway through the 6 styles now, and we turn our attention to people development. The coaching leader, which could also lend itself to mentorship, is all about investing in the development of those on your team. It's seeing the potential in people and equipping them with the knowledge, the skill, and the opportunity to grow. It will work wonderfully in a setting where you have a team of people who are hungry to grow or interested in learning. But equally, it will be rendered completely useless in a setting where you have people that have no desire to change or no desire to learn. In the presence of people who are only interested in staying the same, your efforts get proven completely wasted should you invest this style in the wrong setting and at the wrong time. While there is absolutely a time and a place to invest in people, as there is a time and a place for creating harmony and rebuilding trust amongst people, the harsh reality is that there is also a time and a place when people need to be commanded. The coercive leader takes charge, and in doing so they command rapid compliance with their instruction. This is an especially risky style of leadership, as applied in the wrong setting or applied consistently will only result in underperformance. And alongside that, lack of engagement and motivation, as humans typically don't like being told what to do. That being said, In a crisis situation, a genuine crisis situation, where speed and decision making is of the absolute essence, this is the style of leadership that can get results and it will get people moving. When crisis takes hold, the majority of people are perfectly happy to be told what to do. And many actually would prefer that experience, as they would rather be the shepherded than the one responsible for shepherding in that moment. Make no bones though, this should absolutely not be applied in most settings, and it should never be used in continuous effect. Doing so only renders performance at the lower end of the scale. But not only that, you can find yourself as a leader very lonely as people abandon ship and they seek calmer waters or calmer leadership even. Finally, we have the democratic leader, a near polar opposite to the coercive leader of last. This style of leadership is all about building consensus amongst people on a team. It's a great style of leadership if you want to secure buy-in to something, or where you might need shared ownership or shared accountability for something. But like all other leadership styles, it has its inappropriate and ineffective settings also. In a crisis, democracy kind of goes out the window. There just isn't time to consult everyone's opinion or ask everybody's ideas for something. This is when we need somebody to take charge and make decisions. What this all leads us to is the importance of adaptability, or the need for leaders to be adaptable, chameleon-like to coin a phrase. As Goleman famously said, the best leaders don't just know one style of leadership. They're skilled at several, and they have the flexibility to switch between styles as the circumstances dictate. So what do you do with this? How do you make use of this model back in the workplace? Well, perhaps start with some simple self-reflection. Ask yourself the following 5 questions. Number 1, what do I believe my default style of leadership to be? Which style of leadership do I associate with most of all out of the 6 that have been previewed today? Or number 2, how comfortable am I at switching between leadership styles? What settings might I have been in where I've shown the ability to adapt and apply a specific style of leadership away from my default style? Or number 3, which style am I least comfortable adapting to? What would I describe my leadership Achilles heel as of the 6 that are featured? Or number 4, what situations may need me to adapt my style of leadership? And is there any situation facing my company or perhaps my team right now? And finally, number 5, how can I get better at switching between each of these leadership styles? How do I make this natural and comfortable for me to do so? What I've come to the conclusion on is that leadership is more of an art than a specific science. It's something that is learned over time, and with enough exposure and enough opportunity and enough practice, we can actually get better at it. As the famous phrase says, one size really doesn't fit all. And it's our job as leaders to learn to be able to adapt and adjust to whatever circumstance might be in front of us or whatever situation we're facing. Just like it's our responsibility to learn to read when adapting might be necessary or when adapting might be needed. You can discover more about Daniel Goleman, including many of his works on things like emotional intelligence, by clicking in the comments section below. I've included all the usual shareable content for you to dive deeper on this subject, and of course, please come back and check out our previous episodes and the ones that we're still to release. We love having you see this material.